There's an article here about Hitler's girlfriends, and it's interesting because obviously when you read modern day history books, they really only focus on one name when it comes to Hitler's relationships, and that's Eva Braun. But this is written in December 1939, and Eva Braun kind of comes up right at the end, almost as an afterthought. It's kind of, you know, he's rumoured to have a new relationship now, kind of thing. But the article is titled "The Führer's Friends." And it says most of Hitler's paladins are married, and his refusal to wed has caused sorrow amongst loyal supporters and whispering amongst his opponents. But to say that women have played no part in his life would be wide of the mark. He's had many girlfriends, but their association has invariably brought them unhappiness. Hitler's first love is believed to have been the sister of his Munich chauffeur, Jenny Haug. He spent many hours in her company and often took her out. Before the Munich beer cellar push, Jenny was regarded as his bride-to-be. Jenny was jealous, however, and objected to her friend spending whole days with his party comrade, Hermann Esser, and his pretty young wife. Soon Hitler was describing his Jenny as a loony hag, and after a time he broke off all relationship with her and her brother. Leni Riefenstahl was for a time said to be Hitler's special companion. She was thrice privileged to make the film of the Nuremberg party rally, and she belonged to the innermost Hitler's Goering circle, but there are no reasons to believe that the Führer was particularly intimate. Wikipedia has a page about Leni Riefenstahl. It describes her as a filmmaker and a director of Nazi propaganda films. She survived the war. She lived to be 101, in fact. She died in 2002. It says that she was held in various prisoner of war camps after the war, and she was tried for Nazi war crimes, but she was found guilty of being a Nazi sympathiser, but not actually being guilty of any crimes other than that. She said that her biggest regret in life was meeting Hitler, declaring it was the biggest catastrophe of my life. Until the day I die, people will keep saying Leni is a Nazi, and I'll keep saying, but what did she do? And then shortly before she died, she was interviewed by the BBC, and she said, I was one of the millions who thought Hitler had all the answers. We could only see the good things, we didn't know the bad things that were to come. About the same time, murmurs spread of his warm friendship for Margaret Slezak, daughter of the famous Viennese opera singer Leo Slezak. Once again, there was no deep significance. More deeply than by brief flirtations, Adolf Hitler was moved by an entanglement in his own family, which ended in tragedy. The Führer tumbled deeply in love with his niece, Greta Raubel, daughter of his stepsister Angela. A simple-minded, blonde young country girl from Upper Austria, she was called Gelli by her exalted lover. She wanted to go on the stage and he encouraged her. Gelli addressed him as Alf. The leader took her to many political meetings, and when his friends began to gossip, he kicked some of his most faithful disciples out of the party. But in 1930, Greta shot herself in her uncle's flat at Munich. Hitler hushed up her mysterious suicide, but for weeks he was broken-hearted. Greta Raubel was buried in Vienna, and Hitler, who was under expulsion from Austria, was given special permission from the Vienna government to attend the funeral. Having got over that shock, he showed some interest in Henny Hoffmann, the daughter of his friend and personal photographer. The girl and her father lived for a time in Hitler's house, but Henny's interest waned and she fell for Władysław von Schirach, good-looking leader of the Nazi youth movement, who she married in 1932. Now, Wikipedia's got some good stuff on Henny Hoffmann. Again, she survived the war. She died in 1992. And it says that she was 9 when she met Hitler, and that he made a pass at her when she was 17. She says, he gave himself great airs with his dark leather coat, his whip and his Mercedes, whose driver waited for him at the front door. After dinner, Hitler, at that time he was still Herr Hitler to us, sat down at the piano and played some Wagner and some Verdi. Finally, to my very great surprise, he asked me with a very serious air, "Will you kiss me?" As he put his face down to mine, I said no. He turned round and went out, closing the door behind him. When my father returned to the house, I told him of the incident. He laughed in my face and declared, "You're imagining things, you silly goose." But Henny was known as one of the only people who ever challenged Hitler to his face about the Holocaust. In 1943, she saw a group of Jewish women deported from Amsterdam. An NSS soldier had offered to sell her some valuables that had been stolen from them. She thought that she could speak openly to Hitler, having known him since she was a child. And she talked about it in a documentary for the BBC in 1989. She said, "So I told him what I'd seen, and his reply was, 'You're sentimental.' Then there was a terrible row. He stood up, I stood up, and I said, 'Herr Hitler, you ought not to be doing that.' I thought I could allow myself to say such things because I'd known him for so long. I've hurt him deeply, what's more, in front of other men who were there. Then Hitler said, 'Every day 10,000 of my best soldiers die on the battlefield, while others carry on living in the camps. That means the biological balance in Europe is not right anymore.'" And then it just says, "Recently there have been tales about a new friendship, Eva Braun, a buxom 28-year-old who first met the Führer in 1928 in Henny Hoffmann's house, is said to have been waiting ever since for him to pop the question. Fräulein Braun lives in a Munich flat for which Hitler pays the rent. A fortnight ago, it was rumoured he had married her, but that it would be kept an official secret until the war was over." Then it goes on to talk about Goering and Goebbels. It says, "Actress fanciers. In contrast to their leader's furtive ways with his friends, Goering and Goebbels have displayed a flamboyant interest in women, with a special liking for actresses. In official Nazi society, their wives are conspicuous. Elephantine Hermann Goering has married twice." And then it just goes on to talk about their relationships. If you're enjoying this content, please have a look at my channel, Not History But News. I'm reviewing lots of newspapers from the 1930s and the 1940s, so there'll be lots more of this kind of thing. Thank you very much.